nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I thank you for joining me on Wednesday's edition of End of the Age. Now, I trust that all of you had a Merry Christmas and celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, even though we know He probably wasn't born about this time. But yet, we celebrate it every year, and I hope that you've gone through that story with your children to make sure they understand what we're really doing this time of year. And then, of course, we've only got a couple programs left until the first of the year and the beginning of 2018. And Irvin Baxter has taken a little R&R. He's out in somewhere out in California, and him and his wife, and they're enjoying a beachside resort. And so we want to wish them all the best and pray for him. Keep him in your prayers that he gets his much-needed rest and relaxation and comes back full tilt at the first of the year. And so I thank you for joining me today. Now we're going to be talking about, you understand that the Bible prophesies a world government. And it lets us know that the United States will not be part of that world government. Well, folks, this is happening right before our very eyes. We're watching the fulfillment of this prophecy. And so the two most famous prophecy books in the Bible, Daniel and Revelation, clearly prophesy a world government for the very near future. And the first part of it is found in Daniel 7:23, and it says it this way: "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces." So this passage is referring to the last day dictator, the Antichrist, who will rule the world just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. It's talking about him, his world government. And Daniel 7:24 through 27 clearly states that this world government will continue until the return of Jesus Christ, when the kingdom of God is going to be established on the earth. So it can't be the Roman Empire or the Grecians, the Media-Persia Empire, or the Babylonians, because the Bible tells us this is going to be established and it will last all the way till the end when Jesus returns. Then jump to Revelation 13:1 through 8. It prophesies the establishment of a world government. It's the same one referred to in Daniel. And it talks about the leader of that world government, the Antichrist, which will be here just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So it's talking about the same entity. Then Revelation 13:7 says of the Antichrist and his one world government, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations." So it's going to be a world government. And it's going to be here and reigning during the Great Tribulation. Well, he will be given, he will make war with the saints at that time. Then Revelation 13:5, it even goes as far as to tell us how long the world government's going to continue, where it will be fully in power. Now, we're watching the establishment of it right now, but it's going to be fully in power, and the Antichrist is going to be reigning over it for a certain period of time. The Bible says, "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him," the Antichrist, "to continue 42 months. So this 42-month period refers to the time of the Great Tribulation, which culminates with the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. So it's another way that we know that this world government will last all the way up to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So we're watching the formation of this right now, which lets us know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are living in the end time. Now, you say, well, okay, so right now the United States is the main supporter of this world governing system and has been for the last 70 plus years. So how do you guys know that the United States isn't going to be involved in this? Well, the eagle's wings, if you've heard us teach Revelation or Daniel chapter 7, the eagle's wings, which is the United States, is not mentioned in Revelation chapter 13. And also in Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, it lets us know the United States, the main driver of that world government for the last 70 plus years, will not be included in that world governing body. And it says, and the wings of, and to her, the woman, in that chapter is Israel, is given the two wings of a great eagle, where she is nourished in her place for times, and half a times. It's during that same 42-month period where that the Bible says the world government will be reigning supreme and the Antichrist will rule over that. Times, and half a times is the same 42-month period. The Great Tribulation, which ends with the second coming of Jesus Christ. So understanding these prophecies and knowing the political landscape in America for the last, 73 years now since the establishment of the United Nations, we always wondered how the separation would occur, because it's mentioned as in Daniel 7, the eagle's wings are definitely mentioned there, coming out of the lion, standing up on the feet of a man, and a man's heart was given to it. But when you get to Revelation 13 again, the United States is not mentioned there. So we always thought, well, where's the separation? Because, you know, we're intricately involved in the United Nations, or have been up until this last year. And let me clarify something. I had somebody email us a comment stating that we talk about politics a lot here on the program, and they were kind of shocked because it was called End of the Age, and this is a prophecy ministry. And I wanted to clarify why we do that. Why does Irvin, Baxter, myself, why do we talk about politics a lot? Because a lot of we use current events to show how the prophecies written 2,000 to 2,500 years ago are coming to pass right now. And many of them are they revolve around political events that are taking place, a world government. The world religion that's being established. It's a lot of that has to do with politics, because the world religion is going to support the world government. And then all the resolutions that are being anti-Israel resolutions that are being handed down from the United Nations, and the revival of the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, all of that deals around politics. Why? Because Satan's method of ruling the world is politics. The Bible says that this world governing body we're talking about today, that the dragon or Satan gives this entity its seat, power, and its great authority. So Satan is the driver behind world government. So a lot of the prophecies that will come to pass in the end time have to do with politics. So we have to talk about politics a lot to show you how these prophecies are coming to pass. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because somebody said, you guys talk about politics a lot, but yet it's a prophecy ministry. Well, in current events today, showing how these prophecies are coming to pass, you got to talk about politics, because Satan is the driver behind that. And it's so corrupt on so many levels. I mean, you could tell that it's satanic. Lies. People tell lies, and conniving and corruption, and just, it's horrible what really goes on in politics. You almost have to sell your soul to it to be successful anymore. And so, but we got to talk about it, and to help you guys understand the prophecies, because that's how we're understanding them. So, just wanted to clarify that before I move on here, because I'm going to be talking about Donald Trump, and everybody says, whoa, you're talking about Donald Trump again. I have to. He's doing so much that is prophetically significant, and it goes right along with my program today, because he's pulling us out of this world government. We always wondered, how could it be? You know, would it be that would the U.S. be defeated in World War III and be a non-factor on the world stage in the end time? Could that be how the United States would pull out? Or we thought, maybe we would simply pull out of the world government and stand with Israel all the way to the end, that's what's going to happen. But we never know how the separation was going to take place. But one thing we always knew was that we would not be part of the world government. And over the last few years, we came to the conclusion, according to the prophecies, that we would stand with Israel and protect Israel all the way to the end. So we knew that was going to happen. Regardless of how it come to pass, that's where we were headed. We're going to stand with Israel, pull out of the world government, stand with Israel all the way to the end. We just didn't know how the prophecy would be fulfilled. Well, that brings me to my program today. It appears that we're watching the fulfillment of these prophecies as we speak. And in two aspects of it, the establishment of the world government and the secession of the United States from that world government. Now, if the opponent to Donald Trump would have got elected last year, we'd have still been headed down the same path 100 miles an hour towards world government here in the United States. But that's where Donald Trump kind of threw a wrench in everything. They don't know how to, and part of my program will be showing you how he's thrown a wrench in their plans, and it's a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. So, the number one issue by far in America's 2016 presidential campaign was globalism. And Donald Trump hammered globalism. Nobody was talking about globalism or globalization until Donald Trump started talking about it. And then everybody picks up on it and starts throwing their hat in the ring. But until then, nobody was really talking about it because they were leaving that subject alone. Because we were headed, the previous several administrations had been yielding up more and more of our sovereignty and to this world governing body. So nobody really wanted to touch that hot potato because a lot of these politicians are in on it. Well, then Donald Trump comes along. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. He knew well what was going on in the country. And so he comes along talking about it right out and really hammering it many times in his campaign. And so Irvin, Baxter, myself, a lot of our team here was sitting around talking about it saying, oh man, could this be the way that the United States gets out? I mean, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else, we knew the United States was going to pull out of the world governing body, but we never knew how. Then Donald Trump comes along and starts hammering globalism and all kinds of different things. Global warming is a hoax. And we were thinking, whoa, that flies right in the face of the international community. So in our minds, that one issue really determined the future course of the United States in the last election. You say, well, what is globalism? Well, globalism is simply the belief that the nation state, like the United States, our nation, the nation state, is now obsolete. Now, this is what people that believe in a world government, they believe the nation state's obsolete and that the world must move into a system of global governance. So really, clearly stated, globalists believe that national borders should be dissolved and that a one world government should be instituted, that borders should be done away with, and we should have this one global community that answers to a world government. And you say, wow, Dave, that's pretty far-fetched. People here in the United States would want to see our borders done away with and answer to a world government. Well, I'm going to go back to, let me give you just a little bit of history, and I'll bring it right back up here to today. But I'm going to go back to Strobe Talbot's article that he wrote in Time magazine in 1992, and the title was The Birth of the Global Nation. It was published in Time magazine all the way back on July 20, 1992. And Strobe Talbot said, I'll bet that within the next 100 years, nationhood or the nation state, as we know it, will be obsolete. He said all states will recognize a single global authority or submit to a world government, And he said a phrase briefly fashionable in the mid-20th century, which is a citizen of the world, will have assumed real meaning by the end of the 21st century. He said all countries are basically social arrangements, accommodations to changing circumstances. There's not really a nation state anymore. And I promise you, this is where we were headed with the last several presidential administrations. And one, it seemed like, got worse than the other one. And Strobe Talbot went on to say that no matter how permanent and even sacred they may seem at any one time, like the United States of America to us that are patriots, he said, in fact, they are artificial and temporary. I don't think the United States is temporary. I don't want it to be. He went on to say that the Cold War was also the European community pioneer, that kind of regional cohesion that may pave the way for globalism. So the way like all of Europe has banded together, many nations pretty much done away with their borders and said they're all slowly yielding their sovereignty to a federalized government, the European Union. It's ran in Brussels, Belgium. Strobe Talbot advocated this, and he said, meanwhile, the free world formed multilateral financial institutions, such as the IMF and others, that depend on member states' willingness to give up a degree of sovereignty. That's the whole goal. Yield up your sovereignty to this world governing body. The International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, can virtually dictate fiscal policies, even including how much tax a government should levy on its citizens. So we have a central bank here. I'll talk about a central bank here in a minute. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade regulates how much a nation can charge on imports. An outside governing agency. The organizations can be seen as the proto-ministries of trade and finance and development for the united world, this world government they're trying to create. Now remember, this was written in 92. So it goes on to say that the internal affairs of a nation used to be off limits to the world community. He said used to be. So the internal affairs of the United States used to be off limits to the world community. Now the principle of humanitarian intervention is gaining acceptance. Globalization has also contributed to the spread of terrorism, drug trafficking, AIDS, and environmental degradation. But because those threats are more common, they're more than any one nation can cope with on its own, they constitute an incentive for international cooperation. See, they're selling this international community, international cooperation, a world government. He said the best mechanism for democracy, whether at the level of a multinational state or that of the planet as a whole, is not an all-powerful Leviathan or centralized superstate. In those terms, people would recognize. He said it's not that, but it's a federation of a union of separate states that allocate central powers to a central government. In other words, he said it's not a superstate, but what I'm advocating is a superstate. While retaining, he said, yielding their powers to a central government while retaining many others for themselves. So you can own the means of production, but yet we're going to regulate it to death, so we might as well own it. That's what he's saying. So federalism, he states, has already proved the most successful of all political experiments. No way. That's not a true statement. And organizations, he says, like the World Federalist Association, which strongly believes in a world government, have for decades advocated it as the basis for, he says in his article, the basis for global government. Now, this article was written in 1992 by Strobe Talbot. 2 years after writing the article, Talbot was tapped by President Bill Clinton to serve as Deputy Secretary of State, where he pushed his and Bill Clinton's global agenda until the end of the Clinton presidency in 2001. Bill Clinton was a liberal internationalist, or somebody that believed in a world government. Hillary Clinton is a liberal internationalist, somebody that believes in a world government. So, Strobe Talbot, you can see where these globalist mind is. They believe in globalism, globalization, doing away with the nation state and tearing down the borders, doing away with our borders, letting anybody comes in who wants to. And you've seen that over the last several years. We had millions of people coming across the border. Nobody was stopping them. And so it was a process of globalization. And then, of course, Donald Trump came and said, we're going to build a wall. We're going to stop people from coming in, whoever wants to. We're going to stop that. And these globalists started crying and tearing him down in the media, which is bought and paid for by the globalist. And so that's what you see going on right now. They're trying to impeach Donald Trump. They're doing everything they can to get rid of him because he's not playing ball with their world government. Well, this is exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. Now, the town hall reports that the story of 2017 was the defeat of globalism, not worldwide, but here in America. But there are still people that are fighting against Donald Trump to implement that here. You know, he said, hey, I'm pulling us out of the Paris Climate Agreement, but you got the governor of California who has said, well, even though Donald Trump doesn't want to implement it, we're going to go ahead and implement it here in the United States. And so there are people that are working against him to implement the process of globalization, this world governing edicts handed out here in the United States. So the town hall, they wrote an article about globalism. It was the story, the end of globalism 2017. So on December 21, they said as President Trump prepared to leave Washington for his Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, he's down there now, the White House released a list of 81 major accomplishments during the president's first year in office. I hope to write an article soon on his accomplishments according to Bible prophecy. And a second list touted more than really 100 other minor achievements in 2017. But his fulfillment of his campaign promise to roll back globalism is one of his crowning achievements of the year, according to Town Hall. Without exception, Trump stood up against the incessant pressure of other countries who were diametrically opposed to what the United States was doing and Trump. They were against the United States. You've seen it lately. The United States and Israel against the world. That's the situation the Bible says is going to be in the earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. We're in the end time, folks. These are fulfillments of Bible prophecy. The United States and Israel against the world. We just have seen it over the last several weeks. And an example of this occurred later the same day that Trump gave his speech at the United Nations in New York. The UN General Assembly held an emergency session to condemn Trump's decision to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. And thereby walking into a trap, the United Nations did, that's really going to come back to bite them. Because, okay, let me explain. So, some of the 128 UN member countries that joined in the vote against this sovereign decision by the United States, that 35 countries abstained, 21 were absent, and only 9 countries, including the United States and Israel, voted absolutely no against the resolution. So what happens? U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley said, well, the United States is going to remember this day in which it was singled out in an assembly for the very act of exercising our right as a sovereign nation. Voting against the United States were really several of the top recipients of our United States foreign aid. Egypt, Iraq, Afghanistan. We give them aid and they voted against what we did. So Ambassador Haley acted promptly to deliver on her promise of the consequences. The U.S. mission, she said, to the United Nations announced that the next year's UN budget would be slashed by over $285 million. What the United States gives the UN, $285 million, we're cutting it. And warned that further reductions would also be made to the UN's management and support functions. So they're not the Trump administration's not messing around with the world government. because Trump is diametrically opposed to that. And Haley said, we will no longer let the generosity of the American people be taken advantage of. She said that in her statement, and she added that inefficiency and overspending of the organization is well known, the United Nations. They're spending stuff on looking for owls in some remote country, and I mean goofy stuff. So the timing of her statement sends a clear message, because for many years, the United States has been paying 22% of the body's annual operating budget, and it's been costing us $1.2 billion in 2017 and 2018, and we also pay 28.5% of the $6.8 billion annual cost of peacekeeping operations. So after the vote, Haley reminded the Assembly that the U.S. was by far the single largest contributor to the United Nations and would remember that vote when we are called upon once again to make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And she said, and we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit. And she also said, I must also say today, when we make generous contributions to the UN, we also have expectations that we will be respected. And what's more, we're being asked to pay for dubious privileges of being disrespected. She said, if our investment fails, we have an obligation to spend our investment in other ways. Any investor would. And the United States will remember this day. So you can see how in the face of the United Nations and the world government, the Trump administration, along with the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, and you've watched it in the news over the past several weeks, we've stood in the face of the international community, we've protected Israel, and this is a direct fulfillment of Bible prophecy we're watching right now.
We would like to wish you a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Since this is the most wonderful time of the year and we are celebrating the birth of Jesus, we would like to share 7 awesome deals to celebrate the season with you. So we are offering up to 50% off on our most popular specials. To name a few, the Understanding the End Time DVD series, From Here to Armageddon collection, Salvation Package, and Understanding the Bible combo, each one with their companion workbooks, which includes outlines, quizzes, and answers. We are also offering a 2-year magazine subscription for just $20.17, our Super Cyber Sale for digital downloads, and the Ultimate Prophecy Package, which contains almost every product Irvin has ever produced. Don't miss out on these Christmas specials to share with your friends and family. To take advantage of these offers, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or visit endtime.com.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real-life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the Watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the Archives button.
So, before the vote that was taken that day, President Trump spoke at a White House cabinet meeting about the vote scheduled for the next day. He said, these nations, they take hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, and then they vote against us. And he said, well, we'll be watching those votes and let them vote against us. He said, we'll save a lot of money. In other words, we're going to withhold funding from them. He said, we don't care. But he went on to say, but this isn't like it used to be, where they could vote against you and then you pay them hundreds of millions of dollars and nobody knows what they're going to do. And nobody knows what they're doing. He said, we're not going to be taken advantage of any longer. Well, 3 weeks earlier, Haley announced that the Trump administration had properly withdrawn from the UN Global Compact for Migration, which claims to be aimed at protecting the rights of refugees and migrants. And its real purpose is to give refugees and migrants the right to resettle in the countries of their choice, the United States, Europe, whatever, while fighting what is misnamed a xenophobia or racism and discrimination towards refugees and migrants. So Haley said in a statement, no country has done more than the United States, and our generosity, it's going to continue. That's who we are. That's what we are. But our decisions on immigration policies are always going to be made by the Americans and Americans alone. We're not going to be dictated to by the United Nations. And remember the prophecies, what we're going through here. The United States not going to be a part of the world government. She said, we will decide how best to control our borders, and we will be allowed to enter and who's going to be allowed to enter our country. Now, folks, that statement right there says it all. By Rex Tillerson. Well, I tell you what, let me continue on because I want to go through something real quick. Moving on just a little bit, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson explained, because he said almost the same thing that Nikki Haley did. He said we simply cannot in good faith support a process that could undermine the sovereign right of the United States to enforce our immigration laws and our secure borders. So the whole Trump administration recognizes we have secure borders. We're not doing away with our borders. We're not following along with the international community. We are going to secure our borders. We're going to say who comes in and who doesn't come in. We're not going to be dictated by the United Nations. And he also stressed that it's the primary responsibility of sovereign states to help ensure that migration is safe, orderly, and legal. And he also said, as 2017 winds down, so does the century-long push for globalism in the United States and at least in the Trump administration. But Rex Tillerson also said that the sovereignty movement of the United States and the open borders that the United Nations is pushing, they're diametrically opposed to each other, in essence. And it's what Nikki Haley's saying. It's what Donald Trump is saying. We do not see eye to eye with the United Nations. We are a sovereign nation, and we will run our own country. And we always wondered, up until the Trump election, how is this going to happen? How is the United States going to pull out? We know from the prophecies of the Bible that it's going to. And now we're watching this right before our very eyes. And folks, this is supposed to occur not too many years before the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. It's what the political landscape is going to look like. There's going to be a world government, but the United States and Israel not going to be a part of that. The United States or the United Nations is never going to fully control Israel all the way to the end. How do we know that? Because she's going to invade Israel at the time of the Battle of Armageddon. If Israel was totally compliant with them, there would be no reason to invade them. But you see, not everyone in the United States believes that our pulling out of the world government is a good thing. There are still very powerful people here in America who are globalists. They're liberal internationalists. They're one-worlders. They're people that believe in a world government, and they believe that it's the answer, and it must be established at all cost. Now you know the back and forth with Donald Trump and the media and the establishment. So you say, well, hold on, establishment, what's that? Well, a huge majority of these powerful individuals are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And these are globalists that control our country as we speak. We have a central bank. It's called the Federal Reserve. It controls our money. It controls the interest rates. Has nothing to do with our government. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned group of bankers that was set up years ago. I don't have time to cover all that on the program, but you can look up the Federal Reserve. Read G. Edward Griffin's book, A Creature from Jekyll Isle, about the Federal Reserve. It's owned by a private group of bankers, and they control the interest rates here in the United States. They control our money. So this establishment that we're talking about, they control the money with the Federal Reserve. The Brookings Institute, it controls the ideologies here, the thought process in our country, what they want us to believe. And that's why you got to be real careful what you hear on the media and different things. And then the Council on Foreign Relations, they supply the officials that control the government, the secretaries of state and not all of them, but a big majority of them, cabinet members, the influential individuals that run our government. Many of them come from and have been groomed at the Council on Foreign Relations. So that it's kind of like a triune entity. Federal Reserve, Council on Foreign Relations, and the Brookings Institute. So last year during the campaign, this establishment thought they had their next well-trained politician to lead the U.S. into full compliance with the world government, or at least much further than before. But their plans were squashed when Donald Trump was elected. They never dreamed he would be elected. And so do you wonder why there's such a battle in Washington over the Trump presidency? It's because, judging by his actions, Trump's not a member of the establishment and is not a believer in world government. Hence the term, make America great again, instead of make the world government great, which they never would have come right out and said, we want a world government. But when they talk about global governance and all these different things, you can see by the actions over the last several decades that they've been all about a world government. And whether it's Republican or Democrat, no matter who you elected, we were still headed in the same direction. Of course, until, like I said, the past election that happened in November 2016. So I have a question, though. When I say establishment, do you know what I mean when I mention that? Who's the establishment? Well, the former Congressman John Rarick in 1971, he said the Council on Foreign Relations is a very, very important entity in the establishment of this world governing body they're trying to establish. He said the Council on Foreign Relations is the establishment. Not only does it have influence and power in key decision-making positions at the highest levels of government to apply pressure from above, but it also announces and uses individuals and groups to bring pressure from below to get their agenda pushed to justify the high-level decisions for converting the U.S. from a sovereign constitutional republic into a servile member state of a one-world dictatorship. In its essence, that's the establishment. Globalists that want to see the United States yield up our sovereignty to a socialistic one-world governing body. These guys believe in socialism. They want to implement it here, i.e., nationalized health care. That's a socialistic principle. And it was dictated to us in the previous administration. You say, what do you mean it was dictated to us? Did you have a choice? You either got on Obamacare or you paid a penalty, right? Unless you had health care from your factory or whatever, you bought your own health care, you paid the penalty. It was dictated. That is nationalized health care, or it was a socialistic principle. So this comes from the establishment pushing that agenda. Many leaders of the U.S. politics have come to believe the answer to global peace and security is a one-world government. They're still pushing that today, even though President Trump's diametrically opposed to it. So this idea has been promoted in colleges, in the press, in business circles, and even throughout religious institutions until it's gained virtual control over both the Republican and Democratic parties. I mean, the Bushes were Republicans. Clinton and Obama were Democrats. But yet we were both headed in the same direction. George H.W. Bush come out and started talking about the New World Order, the world government. And so whether it was Republican or Democrat, we were heading the same direction. And so that's the reason, no matter which party has been in power over the last 50 years, the country seems to just keep moving in the same direction, the direction of world government, global governance. And those who have been leading the United States steadily toward world government have become known as the establishment, whether it's Democrat, Republican. That's why a lot of people, that's one of the reasons we believe, Donald Trump won the election, because their polls weren't telling them the right thing. A lot of people, because they knew we were going the same way, whether it was Republican or Democrat, a lot of people just sat back and thought, what's the use in voting? Who cares? I mean, it's Tweedledee or Tweedledum. You're going to get the same thing either way. So a lot of people sat down back and didn't vote, and they didn't participate in the polls. So their polls were telling them the wrong thing. Well, when it come election night, a lot of these people that have sat back in the wings, they saw, hey, you know what? There might be a change here. So they went and voted, and that's one of the reasons Donald Trump got elected. They wanted a change here in America. A lot of people in the United States were well educated and said, we don't want to be a member of the world government. We want to pull out of that. And of course, that's what's happening. So what does the establishment believe? Well, globalists believe that the nation state has outlived its fullness, and the national sovereignty has become the problem, and a system of world government is the solution. The reasoning goes like this. History shows that sovereign nations inevitably, sooner or later, come into conflict. And when those conflicts can't be worked out through diplomacy, nations then go to war. And weapons of mass destruction have become so powerful that mankind now has the ability to destroy itself. So war has to be eliminated, even outlawed even. So the only way to do that is to eliminate nations, disband national armies, place all arms under a global authority, and that would make war impossible. So when a dispute arises among states, they can take their issues. They don't go back and forth with each other. They go to the United Nations. They present their cases before the UN Security Council, and everything's worked out. All nations then agreed to abide by the decisions of the global authority, and that eliminates war forever. Now, that's what they believe will happen. And since all national armies would have been disbanded, the only army left would be under the control of this world government, and all nations will have no choice but to submit to the decisions of the world government. Now, believe it or not, that's what this establishment, these global thinkers, that's what they believe. The problem is the Antichrist is going to eventually rule over this.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the End Time team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-END-TIME, that's 1-800-363-8463, and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
End Time survives on the goodness of God, product sales, and donations from our wonderful partners. If you find End Time to be a blessing to your life, consider us in your year-end giving for 2017. Our End Time team cannot reach the world alone, but with our partners and the God we serve, nothing is impossible. To be a part of this great cause, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit endtime.com/give.
You know, it almost kind of sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like a good idea. No more war on earth. It's outlawed. You don't use nuclear weapons. I mean, who doesn't like the sound of that? But that's where understanding Bible prophecy really helps us, because in light of all that, one uncomfortable question remains. All of these plans sound okay until we ask this question. What would happen if an Adolf Hitler should gain control over the only army that's left? Or, well, of course, at that time, the world's checks and balances have been destroyed. And consequently, the world would be subjected to the worst tyranny history's ever known by far. Well, the promoters of globalism argue that that scenario will never happen. However, because they say, no, it's the United Nations, it's not going to have a dictator. But the Bible clearly prophesies that that is exactly what will happen as soon as the planned world government becomes strong enough to dominate the world. So right now it doesn't really have the teeth that it wants, but it's growing teeth. They give these anti-Israel resolutions are passed, but we have veto power as a member of the Security Council. So we can veto these resolutions. But what happens if the veto's ever removed? Then they could go down against Israel. They can do whatever they want to at that point. You see, they have teeth at that point. And that's what's going to happen. The Battle of Armageddon is going to be the world governing army coming down against Israel. So the problem is that the world leader is not going to be Hitler that takes this thing over. It's going to be someone that's much worse than Hitler. The Bible calls him the beast, the Antichrist. And the only thing standing between mankind and the emergence of the planned New World Order right now is the United States of America and the American people's love of their national sovereignty, really. And the states of Europe have already they've surrendered much of their sovereignty to the European Union. The leaders of the EU believe their European Union is the first step to the coming global union. That's their goal. And the establishment in America, they believe the same thing. They're all working towards this one world governing body. And now you can understand why there's such an outcry by the international community about Donald Trump. You see, there's very influential, powerful people in the world that are trying to establish this world government. Donald Trump comes along and says, nah, we're the largest supporter of the United Nations and we're not playing ball anymore. He is against globalization. Trump's America First policy is the exact opposite of globalization. So that's why the presidential election last November 8th was so important. During the presidential debates, Irvin, Baxter, myself, we reported on the main issue of the campaign. According to Bible prophecy, it was globalization. Now, there were many things that were super important. I understand that. But we're looking at the direction of our nation here. And so we were saying, hey, folks, look at what's really going on here. We wrote articles. We were talking about on the radio almost daily. The process of globalization is so important. But because do we want to be a socialistic, one world governing body part of that in the United States, or do we want to have our own nation and we want to stand with Israel all the way to the end? We knew that's what was happening. That's why we were talking about it during the election, during the campaign. And we understood full well, according to the prophecy, what was at stake. Would America continue down the path of globalization and the New World Order? Would we reverse our course and reclaim our sovereignty? Because a lot of our sovereignty had already been yielded to the world government. Would we, would we trade our Declaration of Independence for a Declaration of Interdependence, as the establishment really advocates? Would we defend our borders and the Judeo-Christian beliefs that have made us the land of the free and the home of the brave? I mean, if we were to yield up our sovereignty to the world government is humanistic. It's a humanitarian organization. No reliance upon God whatsoever. And I can't see true patriots who would say that they pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation under God, saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to pledge allegiance to this world governing entity. You absolutely cannot ever do that. So after the presidential debate, many of the debates, after the discussions of the political pundits, after all the arguments around the kitchen tables, who are you going to vote for? No, you should vote for X person. This past election really boiled down to one issue. It was globalism against national sovereignty. One of the candidates was heading straight down the road of globalization, pushing it with everything that was in them. And the other one was saying, no, I'm building a wall, national sovereignty. It's America first. Make America great again. Now, this is on the mind of everybody. You go through the news right now. The USA just put out a report. USA Today just put out a report. Now get the title, 10 Ways That Donald Trump Has Upended the World Order in 2017. There are people writing all kinds of articles, and there will be all kinds of lists that come out before the end of the year. We've only got a few days left about what Donald Trump has done over the course of this first year that has been opposed to the world order, because the establishment is screaming about it. So they want people to know we were trying to establish this world government that was supposedly good for America, and your president is fighting us on that. And so they're trying to tear him down. Well, President Trump, according to the USA Today, I'll go through some of the article. He vowed, and what I'm going to do is in the time I have left, I'll give you a list of some of the things that he's done against the world order, because it's a direct fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And some of the things the USA Today went over, and then some of my own with the time that I have left. Of course, Trump vowed that he would put America first in world affairs. Even if it disrupted the way the world operated, he was going to put America first. And boy, did he. I mean, USA Today provided a few scenarios and a few events that he did, and I'm going to add some to the list. So Donald Trump really, he snubbed world conventions, and he provoked really a global outcry from the international community. Number one, he pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is global governance. Back on January 23rd, his first official workday in office, Trump pulled the United States out of the major trade pact negotiated by President Obama with 11 countries that border the Pacific Ocean. And he called his move a great thing for the American worker. The other nations vowed, which believed in a world government, to push ahead on the agreement without the U.S. So it was a separation right there. Well, Senator Jeff Sessions said, among the Trans-Pacific Partnership's endless pages are rules for labor, environment, immigration, handed down to the United States from this and every aspect of global commerce, and a new international regulatory structure to promulgate, implement, and enforce these rules. He was saying, look, folks, this is yielding up our sovereignty to this a world governing body, international rules. Donald Trump comes along on his first day, said, no, we're done. Pulls this out. And so the international, there was an outcry. Oh, I can't believe Donald, this new president's not going to play ball. He's totally screwing up America. No, he was making America great again, which is exactly what he said he would do. He actually vowed to scrap NAFTA, which I wish he would do. The same day the White House said that Trump would renegotiate the '94 North American Free Trade Agreement with Mexico and Canada to stop the U.S. companies from moving plants to its neighbors, particularly Mexico, and eliminating American jobs. And if a new accord could not be reached that is fair for American workers and reduces the U.S. trade deficit, Trump said that he would withdraw from the deal. And both U.S. neighbors, they've resisted major changes, and the talks continue as we speak. Well, you say, well, is that global governance? Absolutely. The global research reports that the 90s saw the emergence of what was called the New World Order. Many of you that watch this program, they know exactly what that is. And this era saw the continual expansion and formation of regional blocs, with the formation of the European Union, the signing of NAFTA, and the creation of the World Trade Organization. It was officially formed in '95 as the successor of the General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. And that was formed in '94 at the Bretton Woods Conference. The World Trade, the WTO, manages the International Liberal Trading Order. NAFTA is a part of global governance. He also imposed a travel ban. And in his first week in office, he issued a travel ban on people from 8 countries, including 6 that have Muslim majority populations. The federal courts blocked the ban, and the list of countries changed, and the Supreme Court approved the latest version, and it affects Iran, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and Chad, while legal challenges continue. The ban has been decried by other countries around the world. Why? It's a direct contradiction of the international community, which advocates open borders of all nations. And then, of course, he battled NATO over money. In his first meeting with the NATO allies in May, Trump scolded their chronic underfunding. You're not paying your fair share of their alliance, and refused to explicitly endorse the mutual defense clause of the treaty. In June, Trump affirmed the U.S. commitment to aid any of the 28 NATO nations if attacked. He did so after the NATO leaders said that they were prepared to maintain a collective self-defense even without American support. And then also he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. Trump ordered the government in June to stop implementing the Obama-era Paris Climate Agreement, totally global governance. Of course, it called for the U.S. and other nations to reduce carbon emissions that contribute to global warming, which is a hoax. It was all based on a lie, a hoax. And Trump, who has disputed a scientific consensus that human activity is causing higher temperatures, said he would be willing to renegotiate the deal that's fairer to the United States, because we were basically getting dictated to and paying for it. And Trump's actions make the U.S. really the lone holdout from the global accord, and it drew international condemnations from other leaders who ruled out new talks. Well, the former UN ambassador John Bolton said all the Paris Climate Accord was a charade moving us toward global governance. And I've got many more. So you can see that time after time after time, Donald Trump's pulling us out of the world governing body, which is fully established. We even have very influential people, the establishment here in the United States, still trying to implement that. That was their goal. And the Bible specifically says just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, there's going to be a fully implemented world government. The Antichrist will be at the helm of that, but the United States is not going to be involved. We're going to protect Israel all the way to the end. Can you see that happening in the news right now? It's a fulfillment of Bible prophecy.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.